it's way easier to use Audition than anything else, honestly.
Yeah. When I was using Audition, it was kind of similar to the audio in Premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. Because it's like designed to be like the entire Adobe suite is designed to be
Functional with each other.
yeah functional with each other. So, all right, sweet. Let's do this. Welcome everyone to another episode of Toss with Toe, brought to you by a broke grad student and my good friend here, Phillip.
Hey guys, how you doing?
So Phillip and I went to UCLA together. We're in the
Good.
same fraternity.
Rush by side.
Rush fast back.
Live ever, die never.
Yeah. So Phillip has a pretty interesting story. I don't know where to start really, but maybe the first question I should ask you is, how many countries have you been to?
Ooh. I think I'm pushing 50 right now.
Okay, 50.
Yeah.
Is your goal to go to like all the countries by the time you...
Yeah, I think it was quite interesting to say because maybe a year ago I wanted it as my goal, but you just kind of feel dumb saying it. Like, oh, like it's just something so unreachable. But now I'm like a fourth of the way there. So yeah, I'm definitely putting it out there. Like my goal is to see every country in the world.
All right, so like how did you start like thinking about maybe doing this? So how long were you gone actually?
So I was gone for, I guess, out of the country for 14 months. But it was 15 months total of this entire adventure. It's because I had to come back home for a wedding, actually. And then after I came back home for the wedding, I ended up getting a job, actually, with a lot of help from you.
Yeah, no problem.
And then after I got the job, I decided, they need to do a background check, so I just go travel for another month. So I guess like 14 months out of the country would be easy to say.
Thanks. So did you leave like right after you graduated from UCLA, or?
That's actually an interesting story. So I was staying at UCLA because I was still interviewing for jobs, and I was interviewing for this job that I really wanted. It was with Oracle. And after my lease ended, I still had 2 more weeks of interviews to go through. So I went through those 2 weeks of interviews, and one of my buddies already worked at Oracle. He said that like they love you so much. And after 2 weeks, they actually ended up cutting me. So I had an entire month of interviews where I got cut at the end of it.
Dang.
So that night,
sucks.
I went home and I bought a one-way ticket to England.
Dang. Okay. What did you bring with you? Did you just bring a backpack or?
Yeah. So I looked on. So that flight was 2 weeks after I bought it. So I stayed on my friend's couch for another 2 weeks, just because I was too scared to go home and talk to my mom about this because. I think there's a lot of pressure on me to like finish school and get like a job and, join the working class. And so for me, just not have a job, quit my internship and be sending it to Europe for a bit, I didn't know what to do. So I ended up going and like on Craigslist and finding sellers. I found like an Osprey Porter 46 because it's like the biggest backpack you can get by Osprey that still fits on carry-on.
Yeah.
And then I brought another small bag where I put my camera into.
Dang. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. Like, especially in Asian families, like there is always you gotta get that job,
Yeah.
Dang. So wait, so you said you were working at an internship?
Yeah. So
Where
I was
was that
working at Sitar Consulting in Torrance, California. So maybe like 20 minutes away from Westwood, where UCLA is located.
Okay. Dang. Okay. So, dude, I don't even know where to start. Like, what'd you do in London? How'd you end up in like every other part of the world?
Yeah. So starting off, I decided London because it was the cheapest flight I could find. So it was $200 one way from LA to London on Norwegian Air. They don't give you food, by the way, unfortunately. And I honestly was pretty nervous back then, and I didn't have like the most confidence because I'd never been like abroad for so long. I even felt nervous, and I didn't even get water on the plane.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't. I must have fallen asleep when they were offering it or something, but I just never got water. And so I landed in London, and one of my best mates actually decided to meet me in London as well. So we were there, and I traveled with him through 13 countries together, I believe, for 1 month. And it was just, getting through Europe is just so easy because of the transportation, and obviously our country is bigger than Europe. So it's so much more connected because the population is just so much bigger. Like in all of Europe compared to America. So even if like the small little areas you want to go to, it's just so easy to get to compared to like states. Like I can't even imagine taking a public bus from like California to Arizona.
Yeah, that's true. I took a bus from Germany to France, That only took like 4 hours or something like that.
Oh, that's not. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. What was your favorite country in Europe?
I think it's very, very odd, but Poland.
Poland, okay.
Yeah, I think you don't really hear that one that much, just because most people don't visit Poland. But I had Quincy, one of our fraternity president, actually had told me he had been to Poland, or he was planning on going to Poland, and he said that was a really good time. So I was supposed to go there with my friend, but we actually ended up missing the bus in Prague.
Dang.
So we ended up sneaking onto a different bus towards. We had no idea where it was headed, actually, and so we ended up in Bratislava in Slovakia.
Okay.
So we just got off the bus there. But on my second time around Eastern Europe, I ended up making it to Sweden to visit one of my best friends, and after that, I made my way down the Baltic countries. So from Estonia all the way through, going down to Lithuania, and I was about to head to Belarus that morning. I had a ticket, and some guy told me like, "Oh, you can't visit Belarus without a visa." And I was like, what? I looked online. It's visa free. It's like, if you fly into Minsk, you don't need a visa. But if you go by land, you need a visa. So I had to change that morning. Instead of taking 20 hours of buses to get to Poland.
Dang.
And I guess one reason why I like Poland is, one, it's a lot cheaper. You could probably live off $10 a day there pretty well. There's not that many tourists, but the nightlife there is like incredible. People are just so open for you to come there and have a good time. I guess like the stereotype is you like Polish guys drinking vodka, and on nights out you have these huge Polish guys buying you vodka and asking you where you're from. They're really confused though, because they're like, you look Chinese but you speak English. So I guess you don't really see that many Asian American tourists out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of had similar experiences too. Like, being an Asian American is always a weird thing when you're traveling abroad, because like depending on what country you go to, like people just don't get it. Like,
and I can understand, because even for me, sometimes when I see like an Asian person, for example, I was in Germany and I saw this guy speaking complete fluent German, and I was like taken aback, and I was like, that's probably how people feel when I speak English perfectly.
Yeah, we visited some family friends in Germany, and they're Chinese, right? But they had kids who had grown up in Germany, and they were like trying to speak German to me, and it was like the most like it just threw me off.
Yeah,
I was like, that must be how most of my relatives felt back in Asia when like we first visited them.
Yeah,
just having these little like Asian kids just like speaking English.
It's a really like, even today when I see like, you know, an Asian person speak like a different language, I'm always like taken aback. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's really cool because you do kind of realize like, wow, like there's a lot of people everywhere.
Bertrand, when we were in Panama, all the Chinese people tend to own supermarkets there. They call them like chinos. So Bertrand and I were in the supermarket, and he couldn't speak Spanish extremely well at the time, or like he was struggling with that, like with their accent. So he was speaking Chinese to them instead, and he's like, I've never spoken Chinese to another. I've never spoken when he was trying to speak Spanish to another Chinese person in a different country before. He was like, this is whack.
Yeah, dude. There are a lot of Chinese people in South America now too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, I didn't realize that until like a while ago, but yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so from Eastern Europe, where did you go from there?
I ended up finding a really cheap flight from Poland to Morocco, and so kind of how I schedule my traveling is, usually for like 2 months I'll have no plan at all. Just like I want to end up in an area eventually. So busing around is quite easy, but I'll usually check Skyscanner and I'll kind of just look for the cheapest flights, or I'll search for areas that like around places I want to go. So if I'm trying to go to like Asia or like the Philippines, for example, and I find no cheap flights to the Philippines, I'll like look for a flight for countries around the Philippines like Vietnam or Japan, and maybe they'll have a cheap layover. So like I'll just like look at Skyscanner for like hours every day while traveling to figure out where I want to go. And so the cheapest flight I could find was from Poland to Morocco for $30. But unfortunately I actually missed that flight.
Oh really? Okay.
Went out with these Polish guys. Too much vodka, unfortunately.
Just didn't wake up the next morning?
I woke up at like 6:30, but because I missed that flight, I actually ended up meeting all these English people. So I ended up staying with them in England, just touring around England for a month afterwards. So I had like free stay everywhere. They were so nice, just taking me out.
So how'd you eventually get to Morocco?
I ended up catching the next flight, so I waited there for 5 more nights.
Okay.
So after that, I ended up in Morocco, and Morocco is probably, and this is controversial, but it's my least favorite country I've ever been to.
Okay. Why's that?
Just because I feel like people there are extremely pushy, and I went around Morocco a good amount, not a good amount, but like I was there for traveling around for 3 weeks. So I started in Marrakesh, then went over to like Merzouga where the Sahara Desert is, then I went over to like Fez, and then I went over to like Chefchaouen, which is where, like the Blue Pearl and all those, like every structure in that area is blue.
Yeah.
And I'd say like people in Morocco, like some of them are really nice, but the majority of people I felt like were trying to rip me off. Maybe because I was in the major cities at the time, because I was experiencing a lot of like stomach issues, and I traveled like a good amount through in areas, and I was eating like local food everywhere. But Morocco is the only place where I felt so sick.
Dang.
So
that sucks.
Yeah.
So you were there for 3 weeks, and like, dang. Okay. So how did you? I guess what was your like daily budget when you were traveling? Because I know you've told me this, but like, for people who are listening, like,
it definitely changes. It changed as I started traveling. So, I mean, in Europe, like if I could just eat all my meals for 10 days, eat all my meals for $10, like I was like happy for that day. And so me and my mate, Vishnu, we were just eating baguettes and salami like every single day to cut costs down. But after a certain time, even that got too expensive, and I realized like salami's just too expensive. And so we were getting like pate spread, so to cut our cost down to like $5 a day for like all of our meals. So in Europe, I'd say I was spending closer to like $25 a day.
Okay.
And then when I got to Eastern Europe, I was spending probably closer to like $20 a day.
Okay.
Morocco, I had a budget of $10 a day, and then Asia, I was budgeting around $7 a day.
Okay.
And
yeah.
As I got to Asia, my other friend ended up meeting me, and so she brought me a hammock, and so that cut my cost down like crazy. So I was hammocking a lot of the times. So what I do is I would just leave my bag in the hostel for like 3 nights, and I would just hammock for 3 nights straight, come back to the hostel and clean myself up, and then I'd slay in one night just to get like some good rest. But for that, I was able to cut my cost down easily to like $7 a day.
They didn't charge you for like washing your bags in the hostel or anything like that?
No, as long as I kept booking in the future, they were fine with it.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a cheat hack. That's really smart, because like, honestly, living expenses is probably like the biggest thing, right?
Easily, definitely.
Dang. Okay. So how'd you move from Morocco to? I guess did you go
Asia,
east?
I guess?
Yeah. Did you go east?
So I ended up from Morocco. I ended up chasing some girl back to Portugal.
Okay.
The story is I was in Estonia, and I met this girl on a night out, and she was like such a beautiful gal, and I gave her my number. I ended up getting her number, and she input it incorrectly, but I didn't know that, so I thought she just gave me a fake number, and I was like, oh, like really bitter about it. And then luckily, one of my friends, she actually ran to this girl at a McDonald's the day she was leaving, and they were both leaving down to Latvia together. And unfortunately, I had booked already another night in Estonia, and so she was like, just go to Latvia and go on a date with me. And I was like, okay, fine. So I ended up taking like a 3-hour bus ride straight to Latvia, went on a date with her, and then she flew back to Portugal, and she's like, come meet me. So when I was in Morocco, we were talking a lot, and she's like, come stay with me and my family. So I ended up staying with her and her family, and it was like such a great time. They taught me so much about Portuguese culture, and it was honestly one of the best weeks of my life. But from there, since I had a week of just kind of relaxing with the family, I decided to plan out my trip. And originally, the entire trip, I never knew I'd go for over a year. I decided, like, at that point when I got there, I was going to buy the flight to Asia. So I bought a flight from London to Ukraine, which was $14.
Dang. That was $14 flight?
For a 4.5-hour flight.
Dang.
And then from Ukraine, I bussed all the way down to Bulgaria. So like how I was planning these flights is I need to fly somewhere in between Europe and Asia to make it cheaper. So the place I pinpointed was the UAE, because a lot of traffic coming through there.
Right.
Cheaper to get through. So I could fly straight from London to Ukraine for $14, and then I just wanted to go from Ukraine through Moldova, Romania, and Bulgaria. And then from there, I flew from Bulgaria to Dubai for $57. And then from Dubai, I flew to the Philippines for $166.
Dang. Okay.
So
How much time did you stay in Dubai?
I was in the UAE for a week, so I spent 5 days in Dubai and like a day and a half in Abu Dhabi. And that was probably the hardest week of travel for me, aside from maybe sleeping on the streets in Japan.
Dang. Okay, we'll get to Japan, but like,
Okay.
what was like the hard parts about Dubai? Like, was it because like the culture, or was it just because like, I don't know, like adjusting to jet lag and crap?
The hardest part was for me, I didn't have that much money and I was still on a budget. And doing Dubai on a budget is one of the hardest things in the world, in my opinion. And obviously, you probably see like all these videos of like luxury,
Right?
like,
Yeah.
everywhere in Dubai. And unfortunately, like, I didn't have that much money, so I luckily found this guy that put a Booking.com ad for $10 for a bed. Unfortunately, it was in Dira, which is kind of like where all the workers live in Dubai. So going there, the cost of living in that area was so cheap. Like my bed was $10. All the meals around that area were about $2 to $3 for full meals. So I was trying to budget about $17 a day in Dubai, and for me, I would buy groceries, and so $10 for my bed, $2 for groceries. That means like going into the city, which Dira is an hour away from the main part of the city. That subway there and back would already cost me about like $4.
Dang.
So I basically had to manage about $2 to $3 for all my food and my water expense, because you can't drink the drinking water there.
Oh.
So in parts of Dubai, it was actually more expensive than Europe, because in Europe, water's free. Like I could drink tap water there. So the hardest part about that though was, one, starving all the time, two, the heat, and the biggest part was my living situation, where I stayed with 32 people in one room.
Holy crap! How big was the room? It was like
really not that big, to be honest. Maybe like 3 to 4 times as big as this room.
for 32 people.
32 people, yeah.
Dang.
So it was just a bunch of guys from India, and man, this was probably the hardest living conditions. So it was like you literally see dust and dirt like just moving around because of the fans, and there's no air conditioning, of course. And every morning you wake up, there's like 2 or 3 cockroaches on the wall next to you. And like my biggest fear in the States was like cockroaches, and I got to a point where, I mean, by far the hardest part of like my trip that I can remember was when I was showering in these bathrooms.
Ooh.
And these guys, they like have a lot of body hair, so it kind of clogs up the drains.
Yeah.
And so you're in a shower room, and if you shower for more than 5 minutes, you're probably like ankle deep in water. And you start to look around, and you're starting to see like hair floating around the water you're in, and you're like, oh man. But then like you look like around more, and you're starting to see like cockroaches floating around the water you're standing in, like touching your ankles. And for me, like I was like, all right, these guys do this every single day for like years. I can do this for a week. And so
That's a good mindset to have.
yeah, despite all that, even though I was like so different, and they kept questioning me where I was from, because like where I was from was just so different. One thing I always remember is like they invited me for dinner, and you know, we're all on the ground, this like disgusting floor, we're eating with our hands, just like eating all this like really amazing Indian food. And one of the guys asked me like, is America really like the movies? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, do you guys really drink from red cups?
Like solo cups?
Yeah, I was telling him, and he was telling me like, is it true that women possibly sleep around there? And I was like, some people do. And he's like, with like other people like every week. And I was like, oh man. And I was like, yeah, it's a different culture. And for them, I talked about like, you know, their aspirations, and they just talked about how, you know, they can't wait to go back to India and be arranged. And I was like, wow, this is like a very different culture. But despite that differences, like they took me in like I was their family.
Dang, that's super cool.
Nice.
Wow.
So it was a very enlightening week of my life, but definitely the hardest at that time.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I feel like when you travel abroad, you just kind of have to like roll with the punches, right?
Rough it out, right?
Like stuff like that happens all the time. Yeah, I got stranded in China once. That was fun.
Oh my god!
Like,
how did you get stranded in China?
Well, we were going to we were supposed to spend the night in Qingdao, which is like on the coast in northern China, and we got there really late because our bus was delayed because it was like typhooning. but even when we got to the hotel, there was basically this miscommunication. So like the way the website was translated into English was that the room was $100 a night.
Okay.
Like the room was $100 a night, but they actually meant it was $100 per person per night. So there was like 14 of us there.
Oh my god.
And like we only got 2 rooms because it was like we're just gonna split it in half and be like, you know, like
$50 per 7 people.
Yeah, so we didn't actually bring enough cash to like pay for the room. So we literally were sitting there for like hours, like trying to negotiate with these people to be like, yo, like look, like we know it's like a translation error, but like this is like what we anticipated, and like we literally don't have a place to stay right now, like, and like you can't in like in China you can't really just sleep on the streets in this city.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's like the police will just like, you know, get you. But
also on top of that, like it's so much easier to like manage like 1 or 2 people, but you're managing 14 people.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god.
Yeah, so that was an interesting experience, but yeah. Okay, so you went to the Philippines.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. What was that experience like? I always want to go to the Philippines, but
I think this is not as like surprising for most like backpackers, but Philippines is actually my favorite country I went to on this trip. And I think when you're traveling, you're trying to look for a mix of like 3 different things. I think like I'd boil it down to like, you know, really good nightlife for some people, like really beautiful things to see, like cool adventures and cultural experience. And so I think like most people when traveling are looking for like a combination of those 3 things. And you know, like wow, beautiful things to see in Philippines. Like I mean, you know, like over like 9,000 islands.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like some of the most beautiful water I've ever seen. Beautiful cliffs to water, and then nightlife. Like man, people in the Philippines love a night out. Like they love going out. People are just so generous there. And then cultural experience is just the culture there is just everyone's extremely friendly. But on top of that, everyone there speaks English, and so you go to these remote villages. And like you know, I do the same thing in Vietnam, where you go to these, and you have too actually.
Yeah.
Go to these small places in Vietnam, and no one there speaks English at all, of course. But in the Philippines, you go to these small places, and like it's a village of 80 people, and everyone comes out to greet you, and everyone speaks English to you. And so like the nice thing is because like I can't learn all these other languages, I can still like relate to these people and get to know them. And honestly, for me, like that was like the best experience I've ever had.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I definitely want to go to the Philippines at some point. Yeah, because it's just a cool country, and like, how'd you get between island to island? Did you just like hop on boats and stuff, or?
So my first boat was I was going from Manila to Coron, and Coron is known for its massive limestone cliffs. And to get there, it was like $32 for the normal fast boat, but I decided to take a $17 cargo ship there. So that was really interesting. I get seasick, so that 17 hours was absolutely miserable. But
Dang.
I mean, I just thought of it like, for me to save $15, that's an entire another day of, or 2 days of like housing and food.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's crazy, dude. Dang. So you brought your camera along?
I did. Yeah.
How did you go about like what did you film? Like how did you like? Because I know you do like YouTube stuff, right? And,
yeah.
What made you decide to like start filming stuff and like putting it into videos?
So most of the time, I mean, when I started the trip, I was mainly a photographer, and you know, I'd made like, you know, a little bit of money to like take on my travels. But with photography, it's just like so simple, right? It's just like one moment, and I had already like been doing photography for the past like 2 years, and when I was in the Philippines, actually, I met this one really popular YouTuber, and then this one like kind of influencer, and they were staying at my hostel that night, and they decided to take me out on a day out because they saw that I had, you know, some camera equipment, and just watching them, like watching this guy's like pursuit of perfection, just details, made me think like, wow. And I had already seen his videos online before I met him, and they were just like so mind-blowing. Seeing them on YouTube made me think like I could never do something like that. It was just so far away from me. But then seeing him do it in person, I thought to myself, like, even though he's so, you know, precise, it's something that I could do, and they really inspired me to do it. His story is just really cool because he was actually a carpenter before that, and then he decided to just make videos one day, and now he's like probably the best YouTube cinematographer, like visual effects artist I've seen on YouTube. His name's Ben TK. So,
yeah. I remember you showed me some videos.
phenomenal, right?
They're pretty insane. Yeah.
Yeah, and so my camera, which is a Nikon D7100, it's like a pretty good photography camera. It actually broke when I was in Thailand. So when I got to Singapore, I decided to buy a new camera, and I bought the same camera that he uses.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
What camera is that?
It's a Sony A7 III.
Oh, okay.
That cost me a pretty penny, definitely.
Dang.
I probably calculated like I could travel for 4 months, or I could buy this camera.
Dude. Okay, so how did it break in Thailand? Like, what happened? You were just like...
Oh, it's not really a cool story at all. Like, one day it just stopped working. So,
that
like,
sucks.
Maybe because,
Was
like...
it water damage or...
Nothing. I think it probably hit its shutter limit. So, just stopped working one day. So I decided just to toss it. But the Sony... Why I started getting into film is... I don't know, I thought I was, like, doing all this, like, really amazing things. And I was growing as a person a lot. And I told myself, like, as long as every single month that I'm learning something new, then I feel like I can justify, like, I'm paying for education. Not just, like, paying to, get, like, fucked up in, like, these other countries.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, like, I want to learn an actual, like, tangible skill. So why not, like, video editing? And so that's something that I've really been focusing on. And, man, like, you just learn how difficult it is. And you have a really big appreciation for people's craft. But... man, like, it's something that I developed a passion for, definitely.
Dang, yeah. I mean, some of your videos that you've put out are, like, pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I really hope, and I know they're going to be much better in the future.
Yeah, dude. I'm stoked to see what you do, honestly, because...
Thank you very much.
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah. What was your experience in Southeast Asia? Because, like, I feel like I know the most about that area of the world, too, because I've probably done the most traveling there. Mm-hmm. But, like... I guess where did you go first in Southeast Asia? Did you hit Thailand first, or did you go to like...
So it was the Philippines first?
Yeah.
So in Philippines, I went to Taiwan. Taiwan, okay. I made my way to Thailand, and then I went from Thailand to Malaysia to Singapore, and then I went over to Indonesia, then went back through Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand.
Okay.
Then flew over to Vietnam, and then from Vietnam I went to Korea, and then ended in Japan. That's my Asia trip.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Singapore is super nice. That's where my family's from, obviously. Oh, wow. But I mean, it's a small country. Like,
so small. My God.
Like, I don't think people really realize how small it actually is. Like, you can get across Singapore in, like, I don't know, like, maybe an hour.
I'd say maybe 2.
Maybe 2.
It's crazy how small. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on which direction you're going.
Yeah.
It's like the one way is longer than the other, right? So it's like,
The latitudinal side is definitely shorter.
Yeah.
Singapore was really tough for me because just on my budget, I think I spent an average of $13 a day in Singapore, so $40 total. Just because my housing was like really expensive, it was $11, and then what I did was I just slept in the lounge of that hostel with my friend until the next morning at 5 a.m. Before the reception came in. We just leave and we go explore the city again.
Dang.
But Southeast Asia itself, the culture is like so interesting, and even just like the major cities, like you see just such a massive disparity of wealth. You kind of don't see that anywhere else in the world, I think.
Yeah, no, that's super true. Because, like, yeah, of all the countries, probably not so much Japan, but, like, the mainland Asian countries, like, there are people there who are really, really wealthy.
Like, filthy rich.
Yeah, but the moment you go, like, an hour out of the city, it's just, like, dirt poor poverty, which is, like, kind of jarring, like, mentally, because you're just, like, it's like you're constantly going back and forth between two different worlds, and it's just, like, crazy.
It's crazy for us. I mean, like, even living in Los Angeles, you see these people that are extremely well off, and then you see, like, homeless people, right? Mm-hmm. But, like, to see people, like, literally if you drive, like, an hour away from, like, Kuala Lumpur, you see, like, Kuala Lumpur is, like, a very industrialized city in Malaysia now, but driving an hour away, you see people, like, living in these, like, small little villages, and, like, I think I was, like, 2 hours away in this, like, 2 hours north somewhere on my way to Ipoh, and, like, the area was just so, like, there's not much to see at all. And the standard of living is just, like, so low. But, I don't know, I guess one of the most like biggest learning experiences for me was definitely like going to those areas and seeing like how happy those people are. And I think we both went to UCLA together, and we have like some of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life at that university. Like really, really awesome people, and the university culture is like amazing. I think I don't know anyone that didn't like the experience at UCLA.
Yeah,
but at the same time, like people there just you learn so much about their problems, and they're like, so like depressed sometimes over like I don't want to say trivial things, but trivial in like the grand scheme of things. And you see people, and like I guess you'll hear it all the time, but like people in like these third world countries that have absolutely nothing, and they're just so happy.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Hope that you're now aware that we have our podcast up on Spotify, Google Play, and also Apple Podcasts. Additionally, we started a YouTube channel and we'll be slowly improving our video content there, so be sure to head over there to like and subscribe. Now, back to the show. I think that's definitely true. Like, there is... Like, it's hard because I think most Americans don't actually travel. I think statistically that's obviously true. But, like, the moment you leave the country, you kind of realize, like, how much, like, our material wealth, like, kind of doesn't matter. Like, like, it really doesn't. Like,
and even, like, I think there's so much pressure on, all of us to get jobs. Like, I can't tell you how many, like, all my friends are stressed about having a job after university.
Yeah.
And I would tell people how, like, I didn't get this job I really wanted at Oracle, and my mom kind of saw me, like a lot of people saw me as kind of like a failure at that time, and people were like, "What? How old are you?" And I was like, "I'm 21." And like, you're 21 years old and you're worried about not having a job. And in a lot of countries, especially in Western Europe, people wouldn't start getting jobs until like 23, 24. Like, I met this guy in Denmark, or from Denmark, and he was telling me, like, it's very common for people to not start university until like 23, 24. And it kind of made me think, like, why are we starting to work so early as the culture in America? Maybe it's like capitalist society telling us, like, you start working young, you'll make more money in the future. But I don't know. Most of my family members, like, we come from a third world country. Like, most of my ancestors didn't have like a very long life. And so for me, I think of it like I better take this advantage that I have to, like, relax and travel now, because when I'm older, like, I might not have those years later.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think that's a perspective that, like, most Americans could probably benefit from learning. Like, I don't know. One of the things that I forgot who said this, but one of the alumni in our fraternity, he said, like, your life is like your life is not about what you get, it's about what you give. And like, that has always kind of stuck with me.
I have heard that a lot.
Yeah. And like, because it's true, it's like dude, like, yeah, you could sit there like making a bunch of money and like, so what? Like, money is just like this thing that kind of like amplifies the good and the bad. So like, you could spend your time worrying about that, but like, that's why I kind of take a perspective about, like, I don't worry about my finances. And like, a lot of people in grad school, especially, like super stressed out about finances.
I can understand that completely.
Because like, you're not making that much money relative to like the rest of American society, but like, I've traveled enough to know that like, I'll be okay. Like,
easily. Like, it's not, what, 70% of the world live on less than $10 a day, and that's like minimum wage here in California now.
Yeah, exactly.
So in 1 hour, you're making more than like people live on an entire day.
Yeah.
And like, even me, like, I can't even imagine like living off minimum wage, especially before traveling. I thought like minimum wage was just too little. You could never afford a place in California. But after like having these experiences and really tightening my budget, I realized, honestly, even on minimum wage, even if you're paying for your own place, you could probably still find the time to travel if you really wanted to. But unfortunately, we're spending like, I don't know, like $10 a day eating out, right? Or getting like Starbucks coffee. And over the course of like 10 days, that's close to $3,700 at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at my eating out budget is like, I time my grocery budget so that I can have that money set aside for eating out with like people, because I still like, I think that's like the way you should do it. But there are a lot of people who literally just eat out every single day. I'm like, dude, you're literally just dumping money down the drain because it's like, I mean, I guess you're getting food, but like,
I think I understand in a sort of way of like if that makes them really happy. And I think one of the biggest things is, and this might be a little bit controversial, but a lot of travelers, they kind of have this mindset where it's something like everyone back home from where I'm from doesn't understand the world. And yeah, I understand that. But for example, Bertrand, who traveled with me for 2 weeks in Central America, after those 2 weeks, he felt very content. And he said he was done traveling, and he learned so much those 2 weeks, but he could not go any further. And I was like, you traveled through Central America for 2 weeks with me, and it was that much of a struggle for him. For some people, like, traveling just, it's a lot, to be honest. Like, it is kind of very daunting to be away from home for that long and not being comfortable. And I kind of sometimes really hate how travelers always talk about how everyone from back home, like, they don't know what they're experiencing. They're wasting their time doing something. They're spending their money on material possessions. But at the end of the day, like, why can't we just be happy maximizing our own utility? And if material possessions make you just as happy, then, there's nothing wrong with that. I'd rather just have people be happy in the end.
Yeah. I think that's... Yeah, I mean, everyone's going to have their own opinion, It's like... It's hard to please everyone. I do think there is, like, kind of an issue, at least in America, where we are kind of, like, hyper-focused on, like...
too much is never too good, right?
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think the benefits of, like, traveling is, like, super... I don't know. I think it's worth it. And, like... there's one thing to travel as a tourist, and it's different if you're traveling to actually be with the people who are in that culture, because most people, when they travel, also end up going to, like, the main tourist destinations. But those rarely show you, like...
what the actual life is like.
Yeah, what the actual life is like there. Until you actually live there with the people, it's, like... It's pretty different, right? So, like... I lived in China for 6 weeks. And, like, I am, like, Chinese heritage, so compared to most people, I probably was better prepared. But even then, like, the sheer culture shock of, like, adjusting to a completely different lifestyle taught me so much about just, like, how people live their life in a different way. And, like, it's not, like, necessarily wrong or anything. It's just different. And, like, I think that's a super good experience, because now it's a lot easier, like, for me to travel to other places and also kind of, like, quickly adapt, so to speak. You probably have the same experience, right?
I say it like feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable, and kind of like I still kind of remember to this day the first time, like, I entered a hostel in Europe, and Europe's really not that different than America, honestly. It's all Western culture, but people there, I was just so nervous, and just, like, minor things made me uncomfortable. And then I'm fast forward, like, sleeping in a hammock in Indonesia, or just throughout Vietnam, or just sleeping on the streets in Japan. That experience, I felt comfortable with that, and I can't even tell you, like, a year before, if you asked me a year prior to that what I'd be doing, I'd be working, like, a 9-to-5 job, and just being a productive member of society, or what society deems as productive. And to see me just roughing it out in Asia, just to save some money, just to sacrifice comfort for adventure, that became comfortable for me. And I can still assimilate to, like, modern day life, because I've been working 9 to 6 for the past month now, but I know if I go back there, I can live that life still.
Yeah, that's super cool. Dude, why were you living on the street in Japan? What was the story behind that?
Yeah, Japan's kind of expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's Korea too. I was sleeping on the street there a bit, and one of the biggest reasons is my hammock broke. Ooh. So the hammock itself did not break, but the mosquito net did break. And if you've ever been to Asia, anything to prevent mosquitoes is, like, your best friend. So also in Japan, it was raining loads, so I had nowhere to set up.
Were you there in the summer?
Yeah. Oh, I was there.
Spring.
Yeah, springtime.
Yeah, typhoon season.
So it was raining like every day I was there. So I decided like hostels were $15 a night, and that doesn't sound like anything at all. And you can spend like easily $15 on one drink here in California, easily in Los Angeles.
Right. Yeah.
But I told myself like $15 like taken out every single day for the entire year would be close to like $5,000, right? So I thought to myself, save this money, get this experience, and you can use that money to have more experiences with other amazing people. And so like I started seeing on my trip, like I didn't have an end date, so every single dollar I could save meant I had another day to meet more people. And I had never really questioned going home until this one night in Japan. It was one of my toughest nights. I was staying at this hostel with my buddies that I'd met for the last few days, but I was sleeping on the street, so I would just come in just to visit them. And at 11 p.m. they had to kick me out. They're like, sorry, you didn't pay for room. So I'm walking by the glass panels and I'm watching everyone drinking, having a good time, and I'm about to spend the night in the rain. So I made myself down to the subway station, and unfortunately they kicked me out. Obviously, like, you know, they're not gonna just like let like. There's not that many homeless people in Japan, to be honest, like at all. So I ended up making my way. I found an enclosed bike rack, and I decided to sleep there for the night. And I was just literally watching rain fall between these bike stokes, and I asked myself, like, why am I traveling? Like, I'm doing this just to save $15, and I could be having so much fun with my friends right now. And even to this part of the story, you're probably like, that's like not cost efficient at all. And you can get sick, and you can end up spending a lot more money. But I think it was just like it's about, for me, pushing myself to my limits. And I ended up, you know, the next morning getting a bunch of like messages asking if I was okay, and you know, a lot of like strangers on like social media that was like sending really kind words. One of the biggest things that pushed me to keep going was there's a Facebook group called Subtle Asian Traits.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I guess, like how to describe the Facebook group is it's Asian people from all around the world, or Asian people from all around the world that have been like westernized, I guess you would say. So these people, like these Western Asians, they all are in this Facebook group, and I honestly didn't think I'd fit in, like I'd get along or get any of like the, you know, memes that go on through the group, because where I grew up there are no Asian people. I grew up in Newport Beach, California. There's like 7 Asian people out of 3,000 students there.
I mean, that was my experience in SLO also.
SLO, I'd imagine so, right?
Yeah.
But just being in this group, like, you start to realize, like, yeah, like, this is just like Asian families no matter where you go. And, you know, they just bring culture everywhere they go. And one of the biggest things is I posted on it talking about my traveling experiences, and I had a lot of people, like hundreds of people, reach out to me telling me, like, asking me for advice and talking about, you know, how what I was doing was so special. Just because as an Asian American or a West, or just an Asian person in general, like, traveling really isn't a big thing. And if you travel a good amount, you'll realize that there are not many Asian backpackers ever. And when I was in Bertrand in Central America, there were literally no Asian people that were traveling through there except me and Bertrand. When you're at hostels, I'm usually the only Asian person there. And so it's just kind of not part of the culture, and maybe it's a lot to do with parental pressure.
Yeah.
So for me, like, it was so refreshing to have all these, you know, Asian Americans talk to me about, you know, how I'm inspiring them. And for me, like, I have like, you know, just a few, like a small following on Instagram where people just like really like my travel photos, and for them to tell me how like enriching I am to their lives made me want to keep going. So that was one of the biggest reasons that kept pushing me forward, and I ended up getting to stay with a lot of people that I met through like Subtle Asian Traits while traveling and getting to know them. And so these are going to be people, hopefully, that will be my friends for the rest of my life.
Dude, that's super cool. Yeah. It's kind of crazy because, like, I think that is like a positive thing about social media. There's negative things about social media, obviously.
Definitely.
But like things like that is like really cool because, you know, connecting Subtle Asian Traits was definitely out of nowhere, I feel like.
Yeah, my God.
It just blew up.
My last year of university, I think.
Yeah, because I remember when that happened, I was just like, holy crap, like this, for some reason, speaks so much to me, and I don't know why. And it was crazy to just see how many people that I feel like you can get pretty isolated in Asian families sometimes. That might just be part of the culture too, because Asian families tend to like, like if things happen, you always keep it within the family.
Yeah.
Right. So like because of that, you kind of feel like you're the only one a lot of times.
Can't relate to other people.
Yeah. Even when you're around other Asian Americans, like there's kind of like you kind of have to like save face type of thing, but like that group kind of like let everyone know like, oh yeah, no, everyone goes through this. It's like it's pretty normal, but yeah. So that's cool, dude. Next time you go somewhere, let me know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think my next small trip. I'm gonna have 2 weeks off, which is crazy to say because everyone else in the world gets like much more vacation days than us. Maybe like first world countries, definitely.
Yeah, first world countries at least.
But I think next year I'll have 2 weeks free. I decided to skip Guatemala as my last Central American country, so I can come back on my 2 week break. Planning things a little bit better nowadays.
Okay.
So I'll be in Guatemala for 2 weeks next year, and if I can confront my mom about this, I think I'll quit my job in a year or two and then travel the world again.
Okay. Nice.
That's the plan.
Hit the rest of the 150 countries.
Yeah, my next big trip, I'm planning South America and Antarctica.
Okay.
Those will be my last continents.
Are you trying to go? What is it? Chile to South Antarctica?
Yeah. Ushuaia.
Ushuaia. Okay.
Yeah. So
that'd be cool.
The most southern point, I believe that's what it is, and then take the 3-week boat over with my seasickness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough, but again,
that's the closest point. You could do New Zealand, but that's way farther.
Yeah, and I think it's like 2 months or something. I can't even remember. But I mean, South America, just Central America itself was like such a culture shock. Definitely, it was a lot different than traveling through Southeast Asia.
Okay.
And so,
how so? It was like, what was different about it?
I think maybe just. I think the travelers that travel through Central and South America, they're there for much longer. So like you'll find people easily like on your trip traveling for over a year in just South America. And in Southeast Asia, it's much more, Australia is so close. Like, people just go on breaks there. They'll have, like, 4 or 6 weeks off. They'll just go to Asia for a while. While in South America, if you're making the trek from, Europe or Australia, it's so much farther of a distance. You really had to commit. And on top of that, I think, like, Southeast Asia has become such a beautiful destination through Instagram. Like, everyone wants to go. And with South America and Central America, I don't think it has that much like pull to it. So people that go there are much more like big time travelers, I guess. And so meeting those people, like their perspectives on traveling is just so different, and the way they travel is so different. The people there are kind of similar, to be honest, in a sense of like you'll end up in this small village, and I don't speak very good Spanish at all, but at the end of the day, the people there are actually so nice. For example, Nicaragua is seen as a country that you shouldn't visit from America. Mm-hmm. And going there in the capital city of Managua, where there's like so much political unrest, people would stop on the street because I was in crutches and offer me rides places, and I took them. And if you told me that I was gonna take a random ride from a stranger in Nicaragua, I'd be like, no, I'm not that dumb. And I didn't even hesitate when we were there, and people were just so nice and generous to me.
Dang, that's super cool, dude. Yeah. Man, I think that's definitely true. Southeast Asia is definitely becoming very touristy, I think.
Definitely.
Probably because of YouTube and Instagram.
Man, there's so many beautiful places.
Yeah.
It's, no matter what, though, it is still the cost of living is so much cheaper.
Yeah.
In Central America, like, it's expensive. Like, Nicaragua is the cheapest country, and most of the meals are like $3 there, like cheap meals. Mm-hmm. In Asia, you can find cheap meals for like 50 cents.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever go to India or no?
I haven't been to India yet.
Okay. I mean, that's a massive country also.
Yeah.
It's pretty large.
My buddy Vishnu said that we're going to go together, so
okay.
I held off on it for now. And plus, it's visa necessary.
Okay.
So it's kind of expensive, I heard, too.
Because, at least in the cities. Because it's kind of like China, I think. It's very comparable in some ways, but maybe less developed in other ways.
Definitely.
So it's kind of interesting.
They say it's the least Western place in the world.
Yeah. Which is weird because the British were there for a while.
Yeah, this is interesting to think about.
Yeah. China's pretty westernized on the coast.
Yeah, definitely.
But the moment you go west, it's like
no one there.
it's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't even explain how different it is.
I heard even like the food is just so different.
The thing that throws you off in China is that the food changes every city you go to. So like people are like, "Oh yeah, it's just Chinese food." I'm like, "Nah, dude. There's like
Chinese food is very. Yeah.
There's like 200 different ethnic groups, and like every city has their own special dish, and I don't even know what it's called half the time, but I'll eat it." So like,
one thing I did think was interesting is traveling through Southeast Asia. You see a lot of Chinese dishes that like that made their way through, and like a lot
especially
of dishes.
in Vietnam too.
Oh yeah, Vietnam. But like even I was seeing like dishes in Philippines. And I was like, I thought this was a Vietnamese dish, and they're like, "Oh, this originates in China." I was like, "What?"
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, like Vietnam and China were kind of like back and forth. Yeah, they were back and forth, like part of each other, not part of each other, and like that's like most of Asia too. Like before like countries became a thing, like all of like Thailand like was kind of like part of Burma, and like Burma's kind of part of Cambodia and like whatever in Vietnam and everything. So it's just all kind of mixed, which is really cool. But you can also tell the differences. Like Thai curry is way different than like like Vietnamese spices and stuff, and it's like it's hard to explain to people because I'm just like you just kind of have to experience it, otherwise I don't know how to explain what the difference is.
I will say that food, I guess I've had food in a lot of places now, but food in Asia is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And like in Southeast Asia in particular, like they do so much with so little. Like the quality of ingredient is so low. And I think like that's the biggest difference between like I don't know, maybe like Japanese and Korean food versus like Southeast Asian food is like those countries focus on ingredients that are like very high quality, so they kind of let them stand for themselves, while in these poorer countries they generally have really low quality ingredients, but they put so much spices to make it more flavorful to cover up for like how bad the qualities are, and so you get this like really really rich flavorful product. And I'm not saying either one's better. My personal taste, I love Vietnamese food. I love Thai food.
Dude, I miss it already.
So good.
It's so good, dude.
But for those countries, like everywhere else in the world, I thought doesn't even like hold a candle to Asian food.
The thing about like Southeast Asia too is like when you actually like look at the dishes, it's like so simple in some ways.
Sometimes it's just rice and protein. And veggies.
And you're like, this is so simple, but I don't know how you made it taste so good.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. It's just like, I don't know. That entire area is just like a great mixing pot of cuisine. And phenomenal. Dang. All right, so we're heading up about an hour, but I know you got some plans tonight, so
I'm excited.
Yeah. Any last plugs? Where can people find you on Instagram, YouTube?
Yeah. So my name is Phillip Vu. So it's Phillip with 2 L's and then a Q and then VU. That's my YouTube and that's my Instagram.
Okay.
And I'll be posting a lot more. I post on Instagram like basically 5 times a week. Just some travel photos and travel stories, but for YouTube, I'm really gonna start pushing that hard. I want to just make really good like kind of travel story documentaries, and like just maybe like mini like 5 to 10 minute things.
Dang.
Yeah.
Dude, that's super cool. All right, everyone, go over to YouTube, go over to Instagram, follow Phillip Vu.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me on, by the way.
Yeah, dude, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it was good working out with you earlier too. So
yeah.
I'll definitely try to do that more with you.
Working out is such a luxury.
It really
just can't do it while traveling, like at all.
Yeah, that's true. It's pretty hard to find places in like a lot of countries that have like workout equipment.
Can you imagine in Asia, like
no, I've never seen a
workout equipment in Asia? You're just like dripping in sweat by the time you get there.
Yeah, dude. The humidity in Asia is insane.
Oh.
It's absolutely insane. You literally walk outside and you're just immediately sweating. But
It's so bad, to be honest.
Yeah. Dude.
Imagine living in a hammock.
But it's like so worth it for everything else.
Oh my god.
Right?
Yeah.
Like everything else just makes it worth it. And some people can't deal with it, but like, dude, I'm down for that.
If I could push like the Philippines harder, like, man, like what an experience.
Dude, I'll go with you one of these days.
Oh, man.
Let's make it happen.
It'll be so good. It'll be so good.
All right. Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning into this podcast. Be sure to head over to iTunes, give us that 5-star rating. You can also find us on Spotify and Google Play. Be sure to show some love to Phillip. Go over to YouTube and Instagram and follow him and subscribe at Phillip Vu. That's Phillip with 2 L's. Phillip Vu. Music is by Andrew Toe. You can find more of his work on SoundCloud under Zelkanok. That's spelled Zelkanok. Zelkanok. This work is titled Let's All Head Down to Church. Talks with Toe is written and produced by Chris Toe.